So a second woman has came out and accused Kavanaugh of sexual misconduct or allegations, and there's a lot to be talked about it. So the story is basically this. As a freshman in Yale, some 30-odd years ago, this girl went to a party. There were a bunch of people getting really drunk. Kavanaugh was supposedly there. A lot of stuff happened. She was like blackout drunk, and she thinks that Kavanaugh exposed himself. She pushed him away when he got close to her, and he exposed himself. She didn't say anything for years, but now she's saying it was a big deal and it affected her life, and she needs to speak up before Kavanaugh becomes Supreme Court Justice. There's a lot of questions that goes into this. The first thing is she apparently couldn't remember these details, sat down with a Democratic lawyer for 6 days, and then remembered, yes, finally now I remember it was Kavanaugh. To me, the most damning thing, and I encourage everyone to read all the allegations, but the most damning thing is that she called former classmates before coming forward with this story and was like, hey, do you remember this incident? Do you remember that Kavanaugh did this to me? And she apparently admitted to some of these former classmates on the phone, I'm not sure if it was Kavanaugh or not. So she wasn't sure when she's contacting these friends, who knows, a month ago, a couple weeks ago, or something of that nature. But after sitting down with the Democratic lawyer for 6 days, she finally is now convinced, yes, it was Kavanaugh. Now, not one person has come forth that was an eyewitness to this that said Kavanaugh did this. Not one person definitively knows Kavanaugh did this. There was one person listed in the original New Yorker story that said that they heard that Kavanaugh might have done this. But all the people that were supposedly found that were at the actual incident said that no, this didn't happen. There's not even proof that Kavanaugh was there. There are no eyewitnesses that put him there. So it seems incredibly, I'm very skeptical of someone who couldn't remember for 35 years exactly who did this, called people saying, I'm not sure if it was this guy or not, and she admits that she was really drunk and her memory's fuzzy and she has gaps. But then after talking to a Democratic lawyer, it's like, yes, now I'm sure it was him. Even though she couldn't find one person that said, yeah, we remember seeing that, or we remember being there, it was him. So I think that's the most damning indictment of this claim. It just seems... at this point, it's almost beyond comprehension that this is what actually happened, that we should take this at face value. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't hear her out or anything like that, but this is clearly a delaying tactic once more by the Democrats. This is why they were the other woman, Ford, was pushing off testimony over and over. This woman admits she was talking to Democratic lawyers, which means the Democrats knew, and they were like, come on, just get your story out so that we could further delay this. So they had to make the other woman delay until this story could come out. And it's just unbelievably, incredibly disgusting that the Democrats would play politics with sexual assault or sexual misconduct allegations. Because once more, this belittles the entire Me Too movement and any real victims of sexual assault. Even if these women are telling the truth, the fact that they're the Democrats are playing politics with it means they're belittling every woman who has ever gone through any of this. And you can see it. There are a lot of people, especially with this allegation, that are like, this is utter garbage. Which means that the next time if something really does happen, and a politician does something and a woman comes out at the last minute, guess what? They're going to be even more, most people are going to be even more skeptical to believe it, which does unbelievable damage to real victims of sexual assault. But that's the game the Democrats are playing. They feel justified because they feel, which I also feel, that when Mitch McConnell stopped their nominee, Obama's nominee, Merrick Garland, from getting on the court, that was bad. I agree, that was bad. But that doesn't mean you weaponize sexual assault and belittle all real survivors and possibly smear an innocent man to do this. It's absolutely terrible. And I'm on several message boards online and stuff like that, and you can start to see the veil cracking, right, where people are Democrats or people that dislike Trump are like, well, okay, so what if this is what's occurring? Merrick Garland got screwed, so if the Dems should do what they have to get back at them. Like, these people these are the same people that will claim that they're for the Me Too movement and things like that. They have no problem now saying, sure, we'll weaponize it even if we don't know the claims are true because what the Republicans did in the past was bad. It's as if they don't understand that they're belittling the entire movement that they've been cheering for. It's absolutely terrible. The other thing that's worth discussing with this case is, and there's the usual stuff that was the same with Ford, which is there's no eyewitnesses, there's no exact date that's given or anything like that. There is a location that's given, so that's at least better. But it's really thin on details, and so the question becomes, of course, the media and the Democrats are going to say guilty until proven innocent, Clinton. He should just withdraw his name because it's all political ploy, and they're all, even the media, 90% of them are just mouthpieces for the Democrats. So of course that's what they're going to say. Meanwhile, here, let's never forget, they're still not doing anything about Keith Ellison, who's been credibly accused. I happen to think Ellison is also innocent until proven guilty. But the Democrats hold one standard for Kavanaugh, but when it comes to people on their side like Ellison, mum's the word. They don't have anything to say. Or if it was Bill Clinton, or if it was Ted Kennedy. As long as someone's politically expedient for them, and it can hurt them, cost them political points, then they don't have anything to say about these allegations. Sure, they got rid of Al Franken, which I also thought was ridiculous, and I thought Republicans pushing that were ridiculous. I thought he deserved a fair trial, fair hearing before he was just ousted as he was. But they got rid of him because they knew there was another Democrat that would come in and fill the wings. They didn't have any risk to lose anything politically. But when it comes to Ellison, if he had to withdraw now, that means probably there wouldn't be enough time for another Democrat AG candidate from Minnesota to be put in, which would mean the Republicans win. No, they can't have that. So that woman, that's alleged victim, she doesn't deserve the right to be heard. She doesn't deserve to be taken seriously. Remember that when you hear people like Kirsten Gillibrand or this Democrat from Hawaii that's saying all women must always be believed and they know that Kavanaugh's guilty and an attempted rapist and all that. Remember that. They don't have a word to say about Ellison's accuser. I wonder why that is. Isn't that strange? So it's got all the same problems that happened with the Ford situation. But there's another thing that's worth talking about, and that is basically what Kavanaugh's accused of is exposing himself, and we have to ask ourselves, what are the limits? Now, I'm not saying I have the right answer. If we as a society decide exposing yourself in front of a woman like this, which I'll admit, if it happened, is pretty shady and terrible, but is that worth, if he did this as an 18-year-old, does that mean 35 years later that you can't have a career in politics? Or is it just you can't be on the Supreme Court, but you could be on lower courts? Or could you, if you did something like this, could you be like a senator or a congressman? What exactly is the delineation, right? This clearly isn't the same as, it's nowhere near as serious as the first allegation, which, and that allegation sounds like attempted rape if it was true. This clearly isn't that. This seems like a joke that was terrible or something to that effect. But I'm not saying this woman might not have been affected by it, but people saying that she might have PTSD, I'm not saying it's not possible, but are we really saying now that someone who sees someone's exposed genitals have the same illness as troops that saw carnage and conflicts overseas? I mean, it just seems, it seems like the more you say, oh, and this too could be PTSD, you're just like thinning it out. You're making it to where now it's like the claim means nothing. Like, oh, you PTSD from seeing someone exposed. And so you were shocked for 35 years and you couldn't say anything. I mean, again, I'm not a doctor. I'm sure there are doctors that could say this might be the case, but it just as a layman, it's like, really? Like, it seems like we're stretching this out. And then where do we draw the line between a man doing this versus a woman doing this? I've seen college campuses that encourage women to be topless and things like that. I've seen situations I was in where women stripped off all of their clothing because the patriarchy, and they were stripping off oppressive clothing or something of that nature. But if you were in the room when the woman exposed themselves like that, were you also assaulted and suffered PTSD? Or, now granted, it's a little different if they didn't approach you to your face like supposedly Kavanaugh's accused of doing. But I've been at music festivals where I've seen women expose themselves and forcibly grab men and women and place them in their chest area and stuff as they were exposed. Is that assault? Is that PTSD that these people have gone through for years based on this? It just seems like we don't have any delineations between what is like what exactly is each level of sexual misconduct and what should the punishment be for that, particularly if we're talking decades-old cases, particularly if those decades-old cases are with almost no evidence. It's just a he said, she said thing at this point. So it's a question that we need to answer, because when you lump something like this in with like something like Bill Cosby or Weinstein was accused of doing, which is actual rape, it seems to belittle the charge of actual rape or the victims of the actual rape. Now, that's not to say, again, for the 100th time, that this woman, her name's Ramirez, wasn't affected by this in a negative way if it happened. I'm just saying we need to have a serious conversation about this. And the last thing is, this is clearly a delaying tactic. Grassley, the Republican that's in charge of the Senate Judiciary Committee, he kind of brought this on himself. Who would have thought that in my last video on this, I correctly predicted that Ford would wait until the last minute after she said she wouldn't testify, wait till the last minute, say she would, and then would do all she could to delay out and push back as far as possible. And I said, in other areas, I said, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see new accusations and things like that come up, because this is all just a delaying tactic. And so my advice to Grassley would be, sorry, we're holding the vote. And Grassley did come out to his credit and said, look, the Democrats have been sitting on this. They didn't release this information. If they cared about sexual assault, Dianne Feinstein wouldn't have sat on Ford's allegation for 2 months. They wouldn't have sat on this allegation all week. As soon as they got the claims, they would put them forward as soon as they came out. But instead, they're purposely withholding to try to delay this as much as possible. So, given everything I've said in this video, I think that they should just hold the vote. Leave Ford testify Thursday if that's what she wants, then hold the vote. And I'm sure, as I said before, I think there will be Republicans that will say, well, we're not going to vote for Kavanaugh until we hear from each and every accuser, which is because they are not really Republicans. They are establishment Republicans, just like the establishment Democrats that are on the same side. And they hate Trump, and they will do whatever they can to hurt him. And so they're looking for any excuse to not vote. This is a terrible precedent we are setting for this country. And mark my words, if you hate Trump and you think that this is okay, if this is successful, the Republicans are going to start doing this over and over. This will become the new norm, where anytime someone's appointed to something or at the last minute before an election, you're just going to have nebulous accusers say things like, that person exposed themselves to me one time when I was drunk 30 years ago. I can't remember the time. I can't remember the place. They should have to withdraw. That is the standard the Democrats are setting, and we'll have to believe whoever that accuser is, because that's the standard it's setting, and the other person should be drummed out, have to withdraw, and have their life ruined because of this accusation. And then maybe after the election, then we could have an investigation or something, or after the confirmation, we could have an investigation or something. That's the precedent that's being set. And people don't see if you wouldn't know it to turn on the mainstream news. They think that even questioning someone who's accused, questioning their story or their account, makes you a monster that doesn't care about sexual assault victims. It's pure propaganda. It's pure politics, and it is absolutely disgusting. And I don't normally say that you should vote one way or another. I have my opinions on what you should vote for, but you should reject this at the ballot box, and you should reject this anytime you're having conversations with people. Let everyone know that this is not acceptable. The foundation of our country is the legal system that says innocent till proven guilty, and that includes that we should apply that to the court of public opinion. If we're just saying guilty, guilty, guilty because someone accused, especially in situations such as these two incidents where we're seeing there's basically no proof and there's a lot of shady situations going on behind it, then our country is going to be lost for good. It's going to be like the Stasi. It'll be like Stalin. J'accuse. Any accusation gets you thrown in a gulag. That's where we're heading. So, yeah, I think this story is worth continuing to watch. I hope Grassley does the right thing and just has the vote.